Hello, and on the gaming table today, we're taking a look at the long version of the example battle for command decision. So this, again, is just an illustrative battle, an example, just to kind of walk you through the rules. This one's got the dice involved. This is the longer version of the battle. Now, the battle here is involving some Panzer 38Ts, so I thought perhaps this is 19th Panzer Division, which was equipped with this type of tank, fighting up around Velikia Luki in July-August 1941, when it had a big tangle with the Soviet 29th Territorial Rifle Corps. The Panzer Division had managed to take Velikia Luki, I think around the 20-something of July, got pushed out a day later by a Soviet counterattack, also cutting their lines of supply, and then it took them another several weeks before they regained complete control of that city once again. So the German forces we have in this battle, we've got a fairly full-strength battalion of infantry with all its regular supporting arms and a reinforcing company of panzers. Really, I just put these on the table for a bit of fun because I had the figures, and again, this is just an example battle. The troops here are veteran morale 9. That's pretty typical for panzer forces and their supporting infantry at this stage in 1941. This makes them fairly tough, they're fairly resilient, and they've also got pretty high morale. These are the forces for the Germans. You can see here the three companies in line. Each company has 3 platoons of infantry and a platoon of machine guns attached from the machine gun company. So there are essentially 3 maneuver units there. Then the battalion commander at the bottom, and he's got his 82mm mortars and his battalion guns there, his infantry guns with a tow, and also the tanks at the back. So we've got 1 platoon of Panzer IIs and 2 platoons of Panzer 38Ts. Now, the strength of the Germans is in their ability to command the forces that they have. They have essentially 5 maneuver elements and 5 commanders able to issue commands. So the Soviet forces have a weakened infantry battalion. It is backed up by an anti-tank gun and mortars that are coming from regiment, and it's regular morale 8. It's relatively good on morale. It's not super experienced. At this stage of the war, Soviet forces were a bit of a mix. Maybe there were a lot of trained troops around who didn't have much combat experience, but maybe these were survivors of earlier battles, and so they'd picked up some combat experience, hence their rating of regular. So this is the Soviet force. They've got 3 companies, each of 2 platoons. They've got a machine gun platoon, an anti-tank gun platoon. They've got the battalion commander at the front there, and also they've got some off-board 82mm mortars. Okay, now here their weakness is they only have 1 element that can issue commands. Only the battalion commander is able to issue commands to the companies. The companies can't command themselves. So this is going to mean the Soviets here have to engage in a reasonably static defense. So this was the table setup. In game scale, this is about 1.5 miles left to right and 1 mile bottom to top on the screen here. So in the game, each inch is about 50 yards. The size of a base is about 1 inch. So that gives you kind of a scale as we're going along. Here's the view from the Soviet end, looking at the ground they're defending. The little village in the foreground here is the one that they're wanting to defend the most, but they've got plenty of tree lines and some walls to hide behind here. Now, the Germans set up in the 2 tree lines on the extreme right there, as you can see. They put 2 companies forward and 1 company in reserve, and then they have their battalion assets behind them as well. The tanks come onto the game later on. Now, they don't know where any of the Soviet positions are. They have 4 suspected locations, 3 that are under observation. That's the ruined kind of village closest to them, a couple of the tree lines towards the middle there, and although they can't really observe from this distance, they strongly suspect that there will be Soviet forces in the main village. This is their view, and as they look at the ground that they're going to have to cover to get to their objective of the village at the end of the table. So, before the start of the first turn, the Germans place their first orders down. Second company at the top of the screen is going to stay static while first company moves through the tree lines. Third company is going to swing around the left flank here and see what they can do while the battalion supporting arms move up, get ready to support. So the first turn at 0800, everything moved forward without incident, no enemy spotted, no fire received, and the first company there moving down the tree line to get close to the built-up area. With no action here, they placed orders for the second turn. And in the second turn, they started to move down that tree line further. Here's the view from second company as they cover the advance. And everything proceeded without incident to this position. Still nothing spotted, nothing seen or heard, so nothing to shoot at this stage. You can see their third company managed to make it all the way down that tree line and into the woods at the bottom of the photo there. Now, at the beginning of the third turn, all of a sudden, mortars, 8cm mortars, started raining down on the lead platoon of First Company as it's getting ready to push into that built-up area. So, one attack was taken there, which was a hit. However, the result of that hit was no effect. It did suppress the platoon, that's what the little black marker is for, but it doesn't stop them moving into position where they want to go. And that's what happens. They move in there. The machine gun for the company stayed still to cover the advance, and the company moved in to find that that little damaged hamlet was undefended. With that, Germans place orders for the next turn, wondering where the spotter for those mortars is. In the next turn, the Germans started to be shelled again by mortars. The mortar fire was corrected from its original location onto the same platoon, now in the built-up area, as the company commander there is trying to order his machine guns forward down that tree line, while the other platoons in his company stay in that built-up area. However, that platoon in the built-up area did get hit here. It was attacked twice. The 2 was a hit. And unfortunately, the result of that hit is an elimination. So the Germans lose 1 platoon. Now, in command decision, losing a platoon doesn't mean that everybody's dead. It just means that that platoon is combat ineffective. So that could be a combination of physical casualties, could be KIA and WIA. It also could be psychological injuries. Maybe troops are, too scared and too demoralized to take any further part in the battle. However, that platoon's down, so first casualties on the Germans. After that, the second company moved out of its tree line and into the woods near that small built-up area, and at the bottom of the screen, third company tried to advance a platoon into the tree line there, only to be ambushed by 2 platoons of Soviets. Lots and lots of fire here. They managed to get a couple of hits in here. However, the result of those hits only drove the Germans back. It didn't actually eliminate them here. So it pushed them back into the trees where they come from with a forced back result. However, that will play on their morale when it comes to the next turn. In the general fire phase, the Germans then used their machine guns, which hadn't moved at the bottom, had moved in first company there, so they're shooting with slightly less effect. They managed to shoot into the tree line here to try and take out some of those Soviet platoons. However, no great effect here, no hits. So this is where things stood towards the end of the turn. The Germans placed their orders and then rolled for morale. Both companies that had taken casualties passed their morale checks. You can see the 5 and the 6 there. So everything's relatively in good order to go again. Note at the top of the screen, in the top right there, the mortars and the battalion gun have both moved into a position where now they can engage the Soviets in the tree line. So at the beginning of turn 5, call fire for the mortars. That goes off successfully, and then those Soviet positions start getting hit. At the same time, those Soviet battalion mortars also keep hitting on that machine gun there, suppressing it as well. The Soviet defenders being a bit more roughly handled by the German artillery. Here we can see the German infantry gun firing on the positions up front. The machine gun here did manage to get hit. However, the effect of that hit was no effect. It's suppressed, but otherwise unhurt. Soviets, however, not so lucky here. 2 hits on the stand at the bottom, and that managed to drive it back out of cover and send it fleeing back towards the village in the distance. That means when the third company has sent forward its platoons, now it's 2 platoons going in against 1 suppressed Russian platoon. The odds are more in their favor. However, that doesn't last long, as the Soviets reveal yet another platoon, their command infantry platoon, in the junction of the trees here, and a lot of shooting into the Germans here drives 1 of their platoons back, leaving only 1 to engage in the close assault here. And that close assault fails on the roll of an 8. Actually, it probably should have passed. Remember, these are veteran Germans. They should have had a +1 here, so I think an 8 would have been successful. But anyway, it doesn't really matter too much. Over here, now that that command infantry platoon has been exposed, the Germans in range engage in some small arms fire, however, to no effect. And then the Germans place their orders for the following turn. Now, morale checks here. The morale of the first company here, which is coming out of that built-up area, is passed. It's close to the enemy, needed to take a morale check, but it's okay. However, the third company here unfortunately rolls a 10. That's going to drive back its leading platoons here and also give them a shaken result. That means they're going to be combat ineffective as a company until they're rallied by a higher officer, by their battalion commander. So they flee back into the woods. Over here, the Soviets are similarly in a little bit of morale trouble. Their platoon that managed to run away here, because it's now not in cover, it fails its morale check and is pinned. The commander, however, is not pinned. He wants a disengage order this turn, and he's managing to get it off. So in the following turn here, this is where we stand. The Germans shift all of their fire onto the remaining platoon in the tree line. The Soviet mortar fire stops at this point because the company commander is disengaging and he's going to lose line of sight. The hits on the Soviets here, no effect though. They're not affected at this stage. And the second company, pushing forward a platoon, suddenly finds itself engaged by yet two more platoons, another company of Soviet infantry hiding in another tree line. Unfortunately, the opportunity fire there eliminates that platoon, so that's two platoons down for the Germans now. Here, after the Germans had moved up and the Soviets had withdrawn, the command infantry and infantry platoon in the tree line withdrew to the left and out of shot here. However, the two platoons that could see here, both from 1st Company, managed to get some shooting in at the pinned infantry platoon in the open. And partly because it was in the open, it got smashed. It got taken out, so a platoon down for the Soviets, and you can see there on the left of the picture, the battalion commander and the remaining surviving platoon from that tree line have fallen back some distance from the Germans here. So this is where we stand at the end of that turn as everybody places orders before morale. The battalion commander is going to try and rally the 3rd Company that's cowering in the woods. And at this point, the Panzer Company appears on the board as well, engages in an order to start charging down around the corner of the tree line there and start engaging the Soviets. Now, in the morale phase, things didn't go too badly for the Germans. They had two companies that needed to test, both passed. In the Soviet case, the rifle platoon, next to the green dice there, managed to pass its morale. However, the battalion commander didn't and remained pinned in the open. That means his order is not going to take effect because pinned stands can't issue or follow orders. So now the Germans have recovered their 3rd Company at the bottom there. It's now in good order. Most of their other units are not moving very far, although the panzers at the top of the screen have advanced quite a good way forward. Now, in the opportunity fire phase here, there was a lot of fire exchanged between the various platoons. The Soviets here managed to get no hits on the Germans, unfortunately, at this kind of range. And the same applied down here where they were shooting at quite long distance. However, the Germans, in response, managed to put a large volume of fire into the tree line and managed to eliminate one of those Soviet platoons, the other one unaffected, but that's knocking them down a bit. Over here, a little bit of shooting going on at that command infantry platoon, the headquarters platoon, which is there. And a little bit more going on here from 1st Company, shooting into that remaining Soviet platoon on the tree line. That one was actually eliminated as a result of this as well, so that cleared the entire tree line in that 30-minute turn. Now at this point, at the end of opportunity fire phase, still an opportunity fire, suddenly a 45mm anti-tank gun appeared in the kind of wooded area at the bottom of this tree line here, with a bead on that Panzer II platoon that's approaching. And it rolled only 1 hit out of 3. However, that was a supremely penetrating hit with the roll of a 10, and that Panzer II platoon is taken out of the fight. So good work for those Soviet gunners. And so at this stage, this is how things stand. Everybody's getting ready to put orders down here. Again, that Soviet command platoon there, still pinned, not able to issue orders. The Germans trying to move forward here. 3rd Company on the bottom of the picture there is going to try and charge forward to the next tree line and hope there's no more Soviets there. Up at the top, the Panzer 38Ts are deciding to withdraw back, and they'll let the infantry deal with that anti-tank gun. Now here, the Soviet commander does pass his morale test for this turn, gets unpinned, but it doesn't let him do anything because orders phase is already passed. And the Panzers similarly pass their morale test. In the next turn, the company commander from 2nd Company here orders the battalion mortars in and gets effective fire on that anti-tank gun. That will suppress it, if nothing else. It doesn't take any effective hits here, but it is suppressed. That means its shooting will be much less effective. At the top of the screen here, the Panzer 38Ts had disengaged out of range. That kept them safe from the gun. And down the bottom, 3rd Company's charged forward, and there doesn't appear to be any Soviet forces in this next tree line. Over here, some small arms fire from 2nd Company into the anti-tank gun position, and also some machine gun fire into these Soviet platoons. Unfortunately, the headquarters platoon got hit, and that took out the battalion commander. That means the Soviets now have nothing that can actually issue them orders. In the game, that can happen sometimes where you lose all of your command assets. You could put a house rule in that would let, say, units issue their own withdraw order so that they could try and escape the board, but here we just keep going. Before it passed away, though, that platoon would get some effective fire back on the Germans. It got one hit, but unfortunately that hit was no effect. Over here, a machine gun opened up from the village, and also this platoon you can see on screen, both taking some shots into 3rd Company here. Here's the machine gun taking its shots. It managed to get a hit in, and that forced back one of the platoons. Didn't do any damage, but it did force it back. And here's how things stand at the end of that turn after all of the shooting has taken place. Germans have put their orders down. They're still going to advance 3rd Company at the bottom of the screen here into those trees, and the tanks are going to try and come down the middle lane. You can also see the infantry gun has been limbered up and is moving down the middle lane there to try and get into a better firing position. And at the top of the screen, 2nd Company is going to go for that tree line that's now vacated of Soviet platoons. Here, the morale of the Soviet platoon behind the wall here was failed, so it's pinned. That's going to help the assault. And the Germans passed their morale here, so no other untoward effects. Okay, in the next turn, the mortars keep raining down on the anti-tank gun position. They score a hit, and that drives the crew back. That essentially means the gun remains, the crew gets driven back deeper into cover, and that's going to help because 2nd Company is about to take this tree line. Down here, lots of opportunity fire coming from the Soviets. However, they didn't score any hits. And fire coming back from the Germans here. Lots of small arms fire going into various units there. And they actually managed to eliminate the machine gun that was in the edge of the built-up area. A hit on the platoon that was at the front there for the Soviets also managed to drive it back. And so here we stand with the Germans now rapidly approaching and the Soviets clinging on. They've only got 3 platoons in defense. We put the rest of the Soviet forces on the table there. There's the one remaining company of 2 platoons, one in the little wood and the other one in the corner of the built-up area. You can see the Panzer 38Ts have advanced down the middle of the lane there, getting into position to actually do some damage. Here, the battalion commander needed to order the laggards of 3rd Company here forward because they were out of command range of their own company commander, but that'll let them get back into range. And across the board, everything managed to pass morale, so there were no other untoward effects. The Soviets here are trying to shoot at basically anything, however, they're not having any luck and actually scoring any hits. And the Panzer 38T here starts to engage with its machine guns and main gun, firing small caliber high explosive, as well as the infantry gun there, trying to get some shots in those platoons. No effects here, no damage caused. However, there are needing to be some morale checks. The Soviets passed their morale checks, however, and so going into the next turn, the Germans got ready to push forward the assault further. Here, the tanks needed to take a morale check because they could be suppressed by small arms fire. However, they passed easily, and their order sends them forward further. The Soviets were getting pounded by the 75mm infantry gun as well as the German mortars, and they managed to lose another platoon there. And then the Panzer 38Ts moved up, started to, in general fire phase, started to basically blow the crap out of those Soviets in there, scored enough hits to eliminate the last remaining platoon. So both of those platoons suffered casualties, both were eliminated from the field. That left the one lonely Soviet platoon that you can see right at the bottom of the picture as the only stand left on the table for the Soviets. So we called the game there. That's 5 hours of game time had taken place. To play that whole battle out took a little under 2 hours. And in that time, the 5 hours of battle, the Soviets had pretty much lost their entire battalion. However, those stands could be regrouped by their regiment later on. The Germans had lost 2 platoons, not too bad, but they've been held up for 5 hours or so by this stubborn Soviet defense. So I hope that gave you an interesting look at a command decision example battle. Again, not too big here. We're only doing kind of a battalion on each side, which is pretty good for one player to control. If you want to do bigger games, usually you have more players. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the fight, and I'll be doing a lot more of these in the future. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again real soon.